Imagine you're standing on the deck of a ship, staring out at the endless expanse of ocean. Beneath you lies a world darker than space, filled with pressure, silence and secrets. Now, imagine that world speaks to you, not with words, but with a sound. A deep, echoing roar that no animal, machine, or natural phenomenon should be able to produce. That's exactly what happened in 1997, when scientists recorded a sound so loud, so strange, and so unexplainable that it sparked decades of speculation. They called it the Bloop. It wasn't just heard, it was felt, picked up across oceans, from distant hydrophones thousands of kilometers apart. And yet we still don't know what made it. Was it a living creature, a secret weapon, a glitch in nature itself? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear might change the way you think about the ocean forever. But first, hit that like button and subscribe, because some mysteries don't come from space or ancient tombs. Some rise from the deepest, coldest places on Earth. The story begins not in some haunted place, but in a quiet laboratory, where scientists were analyzing underwater data collected by hydrophones, microphones placed deep in the ocean to detect subtle vibrations. Originally built to listen for enemy submarines during the Cold War, these devices had been repurposed by NOAA to monitor natural ocean activity, whales, tectonic movements, iceberg collisions. But in the summer of 1997, they picked up something they had never heard before. A low-frequency sound that started softly and then rose rapidly in pitch, like something massive rising from the depths. It wasn't mechanical, it wasn't a storm, it was organic, but impossibly loud. So loud that it was picked up by multiple sensors placed across the Pacific Ocean, spaced over 5,000 kilometers apart. The story begins not in some haunted place, but in a quiet laboratory, where scientists were analyzing underwater data collected by hydrophones, microphones placed deep in the ocean to detect subtle vibrations. Originally built to listen for enemy submarines during the Cold War, these devices had been repurposed by NOAA to monitor natural ocean activity, whales, tectonic movements, iceberg collisions. But in the summer of 1997, they picked up something they had never heard before. A low-frequency sound that started softly and then rose rapidly in pitch, like something massive rising from the depths. It wasn't mechanical, it wasn't a storm, it was organic, but impossibly loud. So loud that it was picked up by multiple sensors placed across the Pacific Ocean, spaced over 5,000 kilometers apart. Let's break down just how impossible the Bloop is. The blue whale, the loudest known animal on Earth, can reach 188 decibels. Their haunting calls can travel for hundreds of miles underwater, but the Bloop dwarfed them in intensity and reach. To be detected at such distances, the source had to be larger than any known animal. We're talking about a sound that required hundreds of times more power than a whale's call. Scientists analyzed its waveform and noticed something unsettling. The structure of the sound mimicked organic life. It had rising and falling frequencies like a vocalization. But from what? Could something that big even survive in our oceans? And if it could, why haven't we seen it? It raised chilling questions about deep-sea biology, about how little we truly know. The deeper you go, the less light, the less warmth, the less certainty. What if there are things too big, too old, or too quiet to be noticed by us? The Bloop might have been the one time something that huge made a noise and then went silent. Once scientists triangulated the sound, they found it had come from an area deep in the South Pacific Ocean, a region far from any coastline, ships, or human activity. The exact location, near a spot known as Point Nemo. Point Nemo is officially the most remote place on Earth, located over 1,600 miles from the nearest land. It's so isolated that the closest humans are often astronauts passing overhead aboard the International Space Station. The ocean floor here is some of the least explored on the planet. It's deep, cold, pressurized beyond comprehension. It's also eerie. Nothing reaches here, not sunlight, not sonar, not even most submarines. It's the kind of place where anything could hide, and no one would know. Was it a coincidence that the Bloop came from this exact place? Or was it because nothing else could survive there, except the thing that made the sound? This is where reality starts to bleed into fiction. When the coordinates of the Bloop were made public, fans of horror writer H.P. Lovecraft immediately noticed something bizarre. The Bloop came from an area uncannily close to where Lovecraft had written about a fictional sunken city, Valhalla. In Lovecraft's mythos, Valhalla is the resting place of Cthulhu, a massive cosmic entity described as a sleeping god beneath the waves, dead, but dreaming. Cthulhu was never meant to be real, but the idea that a mysterious sound came from the same waters gave rise to eerie speculation. Was Lovecraft just writing fiction, or did he intuit something older, deeper, stranger? Fans and conspiracy theorists alike latched onto the idea. What if something really does sleep beneath the ocean floor? What if the Bloop was its breath? Not everyone accepts the biological explanation. Skepticism has always surrounded the Bloop, especially among those familiar with the world of advanced military tech and deep-sea exploration. Some argue it was man-made, either an accident, a cover-up, or a signal that something went terribly wrong. Could it have been a classified submarine test, one so experimental that even today it remains off the books? Or maybe a failed deep-sea mining operation using dangerous new technology, an implosion caused by pressure miscalculations in a covert research facility? The ocean's vastness makes it the perfect hiding place. It swallows secrets whole. From Cold War submarines to sound-based weaponry, the ocean has always been a theater for the unknown. In the darker corners of the Pacific, whispers persist about technology that's decades ahead of what we're allowed to see. Scientists have documented unusual sonar activity in those waters for years. Entire regions of the ocean floor are essentially unmonitored, prime real estate for experiments no one's supposed to know about. Could the Bloop have been the final echo of something going catastrophically wrong? An underwater structure collapsing under its own weight? Or maybe the beginning, something activating, something breaking free? There are stories, most unconfirmed, but persistent, of secret labs abandoned after strange failures, sunken crafts found with no trace of crew, whispers of research on pressure-resistant materials, extreme acoustics, even attempts at creating artificial life adapted to the abyss. Some say the sound wasn't a death rattle, but a birth cry. That something mechanical, or engineered, was unleashed, the kind of tech too dangerous to reveal. If it was a human creation, it was silenced quickly. No reports, no footage, no acknowledgement. Just that one massive, unexplainable sound, and silence. As if someone wanted us to hear just enough to be intrigued, but never to understand. Eventually, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, came forward with an official explanation. They claimed that the bloop was most likely caused by a large icequake, a massive block of ice cracking, shifting, and collapsing into the sea somewhere in the southern Pacific. And to be fair, icequakes do exist. When immense glaciers fracture, they can produce loud, reverberating sounds that travel great distances underwater. These acoustic signals can be picked up thousands of miles away, bouncing and bending through layers of pressure and temperature. But almost immediately, doubts started to surface, because as convincing as icequake sounds, the waveform of the bloop didn't match those recorded from typical glacial events. The bloop didn't just crash and fade, it seemed to pulse, to shift. It had a lifelike quality, almost like a call or a movement. It had depth, variation, tone. It rose and fell, like something alive making a sound on purpose. Most glacial sounds are abrupt, sharp, with little modulation. The bloop was slow, deliberate, and complex. Skeptics have long argued that NOAA's statement felt more like a PR move than a true scientific conclusion, a convenient label slapped onto a problem that didn't have a clear answer. Was it a case of Occam's razor, or something far more calculated? What if the goal wasn't to explain it, but to end the conversation? It's as if someone tried to convince the world that a roar was just a crack in the ice, like telling someone a lightning bolt was just a flickering bulb. In trying to make it normal, they made it even more suspicious. Here's the unsettling truth. We know more about the surface of the moon, and even Mars, than we do about our own oceans. Over 80% of Earth's ocean floor remains completely unexplored, uncharted, and seen by human eyes. Think about that. The very planet you live on is mostly water, and we've barely scratched the surface. Down in the ocean's depths, pressure becomes crushing, light disappears, temperature drops to freezing, and the rules begin to bend. There are valleys and trenches deeper than Everest is tall, canyons that stretch for hundreds of miles, volcanic ridges that constantly reshape the sea floor. We've discovered glowing creatures that live without sunlight, entire ecosystems around hydrothermal vents, life where no life was ever supposed to exist. And for every new species we've documented, there could be a dozen more that we'll never find. Not because they're too small, but because they're too good at hiding. The ocean is our planet's final frontier, a realm where myths are born and legends might breathe. We've sent probes into deep space, landed rovers on alien worlds, but the abyss below us, it remains a mystery wrapped in darkness. And maybe, just maybe, that's not an accident. Maybe something wants to be left alone. So if it wasn't an icequake, if it wasn't a whale, and if it wasn't a top secret machine, then what in the world was the bloop? Some believe it was a living creature, but not one from the books. Not a blue whale or squid, but something ancient, something that slumbered in the dark for centuries. And then, disturbed by tectonic movement, or sonar waves, it woke up. What if the sound we heard wasn't a cry, but a warning, a signal to others, or the sound of it rising toward the surface? Some theorize that it was mortally wounded, injured by human exploration or weaponry, and the bloop was its last breath. But others believe it survived, and it's still down there. What if the bloop was just the beginning, the first whisper from something we were never meant to hear? A species that evolved under pressures and temperatures we can't replicate. A beast that lives so deep, it only surfaces once in a millennium. Some even say the sound wasn't natural at all, but part of a language, an echo of communication between titanic beings in the trench. What if there's a whole chorus of sounds we've missed? Or worse, what if we've only recorded one because the others haven't spoken yet? If the ocean hides monsters, we haven't seen them, but we might have heard one. And if we ever hear the bloop again, it might not be alone. So tell me, what do you believe the bloop really was? A prehistoric leviathan from the darkest trench? A rogue government experiment gone wrong? Or something that defies every label we've tried to give it? Drop your theory down in the comments. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the most mysterious sound ever captured in the sea, leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and turn on the bell, because this is just the beginning. We've only scratched the surface of the unknown, and next time the deep might roar again.